Slavica, it's Mother's Day today. How are you?
Oh, I'm missing my girls. I'm missing my girls. I can't wait to be home. But it's a beautiful atmosphere. It's a great day here.
Okay, well, good luck. And who do you think is going to win?
Ferrari.
Okay, well, they're getting the big Ecclestone vote. I don't know how long we got left. Now, the drivers are starting to get into the cars. It's getting much earlier now that they don't do reconnaissance lap. They just... Hey,
you know, Asnar's over there.
Sorry?
You know, the Prime Minister.
Right. We'll talk to the Prime Minister. We're going to talk to the Prime Minister. Where? Which one? Okay. Who do I need to talk to? No, we've talked to. So who's the Prime Minister? Bernie, you've sent me over here. Now you've left me high and dry. Who am I talking to?
Ex-Prime, he used to be the Prime Minister.
Right. All right. How are you, sir?
How are you?
Martin Brundle, ITV. Good to meet you. I think it's a bit of an abrupt introduction, but how are you doing?
Very happy to be here, and congratulations, Bernie Ecclestone. This organization is fantastic.
Okay, well, it's good stuff. Have a great day. Right, well, that was very good, wasn't it? Right, okay. Webber's getting in the car. No, just a quick word with Mark Webber. And literally stand by and we're back to Steve. Quick word, Mark.
Interesting first Grand Prix coming up, I think. We get to the end. I mean, obviously the car's a little bit underdone reliability-wise. Hope we can get to the end, and if we get to the checkered flag, anything's possible today.
All right, good luck. Back to you, Steve.
Well done, Martin. Final proof that politics and sport don't mix. Whatever happens for Martin Brundle during the rest of the afternoon is going to be an anti-climax. But what an atmosphere down on the grid. And then Noakes, this is Shane Warne is around here somewhere. The whole of Australia has turned up for this one.
No, it's fantastic, and I think Martin's a happy bunny having them Noakes sisters. He didn't get the double kiss though, did he?
It is amazing. It always amazes you how relaxed these guys are ahead of the pressures of a Formula One Grand Prix. We've now moved out to a position in the paddock, and just about 30 seconds ago Fernando Alonso was standing alongside us making a couple of phone calls on his mobile phone, and with about 5 minutes to go to the start.
You know, it is incredible, and it's one of the only sports I know of in the world that people get access to the drivers at such short notice just before they're about to go and do their major event. You see athletics, you see football. Those guys never get a microphone stuck underneath their chin at such a late stage, and I'm always impressed with the way the drivers handle it.
Final fly past. The jumbo will swoop low over Albert Park to finally signal that the next big noise you hear will be that of the mass ranks of the Grand Prix grid. And your final thoughts, Mark, as to what's going to happen over the first few laps on this very tough racing circuit, isn't it? And that's something that Lewis is going to discover over the next hour or so.
Yeah, it is a tough circuit, Steve. It's tough on the cars in terms of brakes as well, but at the end of all of this, I think we're going to see a great Grand Prix. They're going to go into pecking order. They're going to want to finish. This is the first Grand Prix. Points are important. They're going to add up at the end of this season. But new boy Lewis Hamilton, Anthony Davidson for the Brits as well, they want to impress.
Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso individually, they'll also be wanting to make big statements on behalf of their new teams. It's a close season that's been so strong on anticipation and speculation. All that is over, and the pre-start spectacle is over as well, as the jumbo disappears over the Melbourne skyline. And now the action will be with us, and we're about to see Formula One with a whole new competitive edge. No Michael Schumacher, but Raikkonen and Alonso on the front row for the Australian Grand Prix. The start is just a few minutes away.
Schumacher is gone, and everyone's frankly had to grow up a little bit to fill the gap he's left. The sport's biggest name, Fernando Alonso, is just 25 years old now, and we have a lot of new faces on the grid. Some very exciting new talent with 7 different makes of cars in the top 10. It's also a good indicator that this season should be a terrific show. Certainly starting very well here in Melbourne. A beautiful sunny day, terrific crowd as always. This place always does Formula One proud every time we come here. There's also a lot to shout about from a British perspective this year. We have 4 British drivers on the grid including Anthony Davidson, who's qualified the Super Aguri Honda in 11th place, and of course Lewis Hamilton, who really has been the centre of attention all weekend. There is something of a star in that boy, just the way he carries himself, his whole demeanour, and of course his performance on the track has been nothing less than sensational. The 22-year-old from Stevenage has kept his illustrious teammate Alonso very honest all weekend, and the Spaniard really had to pull out all the stops to beat him in qualifying. The margin just 0.02 of a second between them on their low fuel Banzai laps. That gives you an indication of the kind of level that Lewis Hamilton has come in at. But we really do have to keep our feet on the ground and manage expectations. He is only starting his first ever Grand Prix. And Martin, you've driven in 158 Grand Prix. They're long, hard races, an hour and a half of racing, very, very different from anything someone like Lewis would have done before. And there really is no substitute for experience, is there, in feeling your way and understanding how a Grand Prix unfolds.
You can do simulated Grand Prix at a test day, but often when you stop, they wheel you back into the pit garage and check things over, and then you go and do the equivalent of the next stint. But of course, you're never under that pressure, and you don't go to the start line and start with 21 other cars. You leave the pit, do a simulator start, and then just go on your own merry way, sometimes with only you on the racetrack. So he would have done many, as I say, simulated race distances, but then it's not the same as doing a Grand Prix itself. But I have to say, I haven't seen anything in Lewis's driving so far this weekend that suggests he's on the ragged edge. Has he really got a car that will do 58 good and solid laps? We'll find out. And there's a lot of uncertainties down there on the grid with tyre choice. It's warm, very, very warm out there today compared to the free running in Friday and Saturday. And I think there'll be a few people with some cars that are working, and a few that are going to be absolutely horrified when they get going and wonder how they've ended up with such a difficult car to drive after so much setting up.
You'll have noticed there as the grid crawler went through, Felipe Massa starting this race from the back of the grid. He had a difficult time in qualifying, a gearbox problem, which meant that he qualified down in 15th place only, and then he decided to change an engine quite late on, about 11:30 this morning, so not long before the start of this Grand Prix. So all kinds of dramas. Ferrari's then bookending the grid. This is your pole sitter, Kimi Raikkonen, his first outing for the prancing horse, the man who has replaced Michael Schumacher. And you know, he's the ideal person to do that. Obviously the speed is a given, he is phenomenally quick, but he just doesn't give a monkey's about anything. And really the only person who could have replaced a 7-time world champion is someone who just flicks cares off his back like water off a duck's back. This is the man who's going to challenge him for the championship this year, Fernando Alonso. First time he stood on the front row of the grid here in Melbourne. He won the race here last year, but he's never been on the front row before. And there at the back is Felipe Massa, who was deeply frustrated yesterday in qualifying, and who can blame him? He had the form. He was in front of Raikkonen throughout winter testing and in the practice sessions here in Melbourne, but the luck has not gone his way. He's already given away quite a bit to his teammate in their inter-team battle for the title.
He may well not have had a specific engine failure as such. They would you've got to use an engine for two consecutive Saturdays and Sundays of a Grand Prix weekend, and he may have elected to take the penalty from 16th back to 22nd just to basically have a fresher engine in Malaysia at the next Grand Prix, which is well known to be very, very tough on engines. So could be a strategic move there. But we'll watch Massa. He's much, much faster than the cars around him.
Away they go then on their parade lap. We're getting news from our... Whoa, that's a lot of smoke coming out of one of the cars there. It's probably an overfill on the oil tank, but we're getting news from the pits that most of the front runners are starting on the harder tyre, but that Nick Heidfeld in the BMW, third on the grid, is starting on the softer tyre. One of the big differences this year in Formula One is a new rule which we'll all have to get used to as the season unfolds. Bridgestone is the only tyre supplier now. We no longer have a tyre war between Michelin and Bridgestone. So Bridgestone have brought along two different types of tyre to every Grand Prix. There's a hard tyre and a soft tyre, and the idea is that there's a performance difference between them. Generally speaking, the teams will qualify on the soft tyre, but they have to use both types of tyre during the Grand Prix. Now, this is likely to be a two-stop race, so there'll be 3 stints basically. And what everyone has to work out is whether or not they should use hard or soft tyres and when to use them. There's a quick look at Trulli and that smoke that came out of the back of his car as he got away from the line. We'll talk more about the tyres as the race unfolds, but clearly BMW are feeling ambitious and they're going for the softer tyre from the start.
Suggests he's light on fuel as well, because my understanding is after about 5 laps, those soft tyres are not the tyres to be on. I'm expecting a more normal race strategy, be 2 long runs on the harder tyre, which is initially slower but just hangs on much better. They all went to the end of the pit lane before they went to the grid and did a practice start. Truly's Toyota pumped a lot of oily blue smoke out as well. What I did notice was the Renault appeared to have an electric start and a brilliant getaway.
Launch 5.
Okay, well, if you saw our technical pieces last year,
Launch map 5. Launch 5.
that is now they've got data from the car. After Mark Webber has done a practice start off the dummy grid, they've now fed him in an electronic setting on his steering wheel that they think will give him the best getaway from his brilliant 7th place on the grid.
Well, we've got 4 rookies in the field, and one of them, as I said, is Lewis Hamilton. And the first major obstacle for all the runners, whether they be rookies or experienced drivers, is the notorious first corner here at Albert Park. It's claimed many victims over the years. In fact, we have more years when there is a first lap accident than years when there isn't. And last year we had 4 safety cars here. It's always an eventful race. I'm told by some of the team engineers there's a 56% likelihood that at some point in this race we'll get a safety car. So the point is, it's a tough race to come through unscathed.
It is, but remember last year was unseasonably cold on race day, and it caught the drivers out, didn't it, on tyres that they'd chosen for the race. So we had a lot of unusual accidents last year. The drivers with simply no grip. But, I was just saying the Renault appeared to have a different way, a secondary phase that just took off when Fisichella did his practice start. So we'll keep an eye on his start down there at Renault. But this race really, I think, should be, Raikkonen should have it very much under control, we're expecting in the early stages. And I can't help but feel Alonso will be looking more in his mirrors at Lewis Hamilton than he will be at Kimi Raikkonen, but we'll find out shortly.
Specialist Giancarlo Fisichella makes his way to the grid. A winner here a couple of years ago. Last year started on the front row. He's starting 6th here today. Renault just taking a little step back from being the world champion team of the last 2 years. McLaren there, Ron Dennis the boss, have taken a step forward. So too have BMW. Ferrari look very strong as well. It really is going to be a thrilling season. There is the BMW boss, Mario Tyson. He's steering them towards the front of the grid with every week that passes. There's the new Ferrari boss, Stefano Domenicali. And everyone lining up. You can see Raikkonen on the right, Alonso on the left, with his teammate Hamilton behind him. And behind Raikkonen on the right-hand side is Nick Heidfeld. We'll have 5 red lights when they go out the 2007 Formula One World Championship.